Oh, hello, dear viewers. Let's take a look here and see what the mighty intellectual powerhouse Sargon of Akkad has deemed worthy of his time this week. The reality of child trafficking rings. So anyway, just a little bit of background here so people know where I'm coming from. I know Sargon of Akkad, he's never biased about anything. It's simply not true. We all have our biases, and the best thing you can do is disclose them beforehand. So I am not in agreement with Sargon and anything really he has said, any of the points he has made in this most recent video. And I'm going to explain why, but first I'm going to explain where I come from. I personally think Sargon has, of late, maybe past 6 months or so, especially with the election ramping up, he has gone down the populist route along with Donald Trump. He's changed. I've noticed it over the past about 3 years that I've been watching him. He's not what he used to be, and I think he's the worst for it. But anyway, the people who I do admire, I used to admire Sargon more than I do now. The people who I still do admire are TLDR and Thunderfoot. I think they make a very excellent videos, very well sourced, but I'm not going to attempt to meet that same caliber of quality. I don't think I'm capable of it. I'll leave that to them. So, what we're wondering about here is this video. So let's take a look at it and see some of the points that Sargon apparently thinks he is making. Before he starts this video, and at the risk of poisoning the well here, he rambles on about how he can't get a decent computer. Apparently, his current computer went out, and I guess he's just so busy he can't run down to the local PC shop and pick up another computer. Does he build his own? I don't think Sargon is all that technically inclined. I think he's like a total biscuit. That's just pure speculation. I don't think he's ever spoken on this subject publicly. I'm not sure. But anyway, the point here is pretty much irrelevant because he mentions that you're going to hear background noise in his audio. And what's the point in this, Sargon? You have money. Get somebody to give you some presets for Adobe Audition or even Audacity. Run your audio through that and get rid of the background noise. It's not that difficult. Anybody can do it, really. And like I said, you got the money. You can hire somebody to make sure your audio sounds good. I have no idea what you're complaining about here.
I just want to apologize that my PC has died, and I'm back on my 5-year-old laptop that I had when I started.
His 5-year-old laptop. His 5-year-old laptop. Back when he started Patreon, guys. Get a new laptop, Sargon. You make so much money off of Patreon. Now, I know the numbers are not necessarily 100% representative of the end amount that you're going to end up making after the month is up, and you have recently changed your model, but you were raking in the dough even if you were getting half that amount. You can afford a new laptop. Why do you have a 5-year-old laptop laying around, huh? Why? I mean, do you care about the quality of the content here? Apparently not. He mostly cares about what he thinks are the quality of ideas, which I can commend him on. It's what made him the superstar that he is right now. But I don't understand this problem of his over his laptop.
If you can hear a low background humming noise, that's what that is. I apologize. And because of Christmas, I don't think I'm going to be able to get a new computer until the next. I have been asked
because of Christmas. It's the 14th of December. That is when you pushed this video out. I have no idea when you recorded it. Likely a day or two before that. It's not Christmas, okay? Shops are still open. You can still buy computers.
Times why I haven't spoken about Pizzagate.
Oh, yes, Pizzagate. So, once again, at the risk of poisoning the well, I will give you a synopsis of what Sargon's position is. He is saying that he can't say that it doesn't exist, but at the same time, he won't say that it does exist because there is no real concrete evidence for it. And as you know, Sargon requires a good deal of concrete evidence. But at the same time, he will go through extraordinary lengths to point out that these things do exist, that in higher ranks of power, there are notable instances of pedophiles occupying those positions and abusing their authority and their power to exploit children. So it's a pretty pointless video overall, but we're going to go through it anyway.
The answer is very simple. There is no proof.
I've seen a lot of people using this animation recently. I mean, this is entirely irrelevant to the point, but Oh, I wonder what software that they're using recently that does this animation, because I keep seeing it pop up. Thunderfoot recently started doing it as well. So apparently whatever cheap piece of software that they're using is rolling that out. I don't know.
I can't make a video about Pizzagate because it would just be conjecture based on circumstantial evidence. Because as of the time...
So instead, what he's going to do here is conjecture based on anecdotal evidence and allegations that certain individuals have made against other certain individuals, and come to the conclusion that if you say that pedophilia doesn't exist, you're a moron. So I think we should give him a big round of applause for coming to that conclusion, because obviously nobody was ever making that argument.
At the time of my recording this video, there is no hard evidence to connect any of these people to ritualistic child abuse.
And he could have stopped there. There was no real reason to go on. That was all you needed to say. Simple as that. You pointed out that there is no concrete evidence to link them, but apparently you couldn't leave it at that, because you have a rabid fan base. You have attracted these nut jobs from places like Breitbart, these conspiracy theorists from Alex Jones, who just run with this kind of stuff, and apparently they won't leave you alone about it, and apparently you feel you have to pander to them to keep them around, because they comprise, I'd say, a decent share of your fan base now. What, 33% is it? I have no idea for sure, but you see them in the comments, and they're quite outspoken.
Given the gravity of child sex abuse allegations, I think it is irresponsible.
The gravity of allegations, what's the point there? Anybody can make allegations. These are grave allegations? What about the allegations for Duke Lacrosse, for example? Were those grave allegations? How do we determine what is a grave allegation and what isn't?
To make allegations based on conjecture and circumstantial evidence.
Okay, here's a little game. Every time Sargon mentions allegations in this video, go ahead and take a drink, and let's see what happens by the end.
I've been following the Pizzagate investigations
of course you have.
And on YouTube, and I think that there is definitely a case of echo chamber mentality occurring there. People are talking themselves up into a frenzy over things that are not proven. In fact, they don't even seem to have been alleged by any victims themselves who...
Since when did Sargon care about allegations from victims? Wasn't he against listen and believe? I mean, granted, I think he makes a very good point here. There hasn't been a solid allegation that has come out against it. It's like the worst of the worst. It's not even listen and believe. It's just make shit up and believe the people who made that up.
Claim to have been abused by any of these people. So I'm afraid until there is some hard evidence, or even just a victim alleging that they were the victim of this, we have to treat this as if it is not true.
Okay, so if somebody comes ahead and brings an allegation forth and says that X did X to me, all of a sudden we should place more credibility in that. I thought you were a skeptic, Sargon. I thought you were a little bit more rational than that. A little bit more willing to not just listen and believe. But I guess that's aside from the point. What we really should be discussing here is why Sargon seems so fascinated with pedophilia. Now, I know that he has a child or two of his own, and now I'm not saying that he is a pedophile, but you know, there are people who are. So I think we should address that. I think maybe I'll bring up the case of Joseph Fritz. Yes, he was one. He was like a serious one, and he presented such a great public image that nobody suspected it. And I think that could happen to Sargon too. And I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just pointing out that it has happened. Oh, I have evidence of this happening, don't I? I'm Sargon of Akkad.
In the rest of this video, I will be addressing those people who, because there is no hard evidence to prove that Pizzagate is a real thing that is happening, think therefore it must be a ridiculous thing. A thing...
No, they're not thinking it's a ridiculous thing. They're pointing out that there is no evidence for it, and that to continually make these accusations and to just hype up this entire case that there is nothing to substantiate it so far is actually in some ways defamatory towards certain individuals. I mean, at what point do you get to the place where you have to say that making these sort of accusations publicly and publicly disseminating them is actually damaging to a person's career and their reputation. And I haven't heard one person say that there are no pedophiles in higher up positions of power. Just like I'm not saying that Sargon isn't. I mean that he is. I'm not saying he is one. But I'm just pointing out that professionals like him, who have a public persona and have much to lose, would have a great deal of interest in making sure that they kept that possible discrepancy concealed behind a veil, so to speak. He wouldn't want anybody to get that information because that would ruin his career, wouldn't it? And you'll see that's pretty much the case that he makes against these people as well, is that, well, the politicians or these leaders that are in high positions, if this information that they're supposedly covering up, he really doesn't bring any proof, if it ever gets out, it will ruin their careers. Yeah, well, guess what? That will happen to anybody with any public-facing career. If allegations like that get out, it will ruin them, okay?
So absurd that the people who are alleging this might be something and want an investigation are simply tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists who have...
Oh, here he goes again. See, the way he strawmans his opponent. Who are the people saying this? I would like to know. Give me some names of people who are actually saying what you're making them say. Because otherwise, I'm suspecting you're just strawmanning a position to bolster your own argument here. Because I have not seen that argument advanced, and I have been following the happenings, the ongoings here, to some extent as well. As much as I could from both sides. I wouldn't say dedicate a whole lot of time to it, but the more major events associated with it I have been keeping up on, and no, I haven't seen anybody advancing this argument that I hear you making all of a sudden, which leads me to conclude that you're simply strawmanning somebody else's position.
No legitimate cause.
That's what give me names.
You are wrong.
You, who?
But worse than that, you are contributing to a culture of silence.
A culture of silence. Now, does it strike anybody as familiar when they say, it doesn't really matter whether or not the allegations were true, it's because it brought up the discussion, it got the thing on the table to be discussed, because we need to discuss it. And that's the end goal. That's the ultimate virtue. Even if it's wrong, we still discussed it, and therefore there is merit in that, and something good came of it. How is what he's saying, what he's advancing here, that much different? It's quite similar. He's saying that people who doubt, who are highly skeptical of the Pizzagate claims, he's saying that they shouldn't be, because they are contributing to a supposed culture of silence around this. And what? So what? It doesn't matter if you feel that way about it, because there is no proof to support your claims here. So why don't you go ahead and just wait and not worry about the culture of silence or contributing to rape culture or pedophile culture. I don't know what you want to call it, Sargon, but it's really ironic that you would say that after pointing out the hysteria that individuals in the past, I think Duke Lacrosse is an excellent example, have made fools of themselves for saying as much. And they've been mocked and ridiculed by those of your kind being the skeptical community, let's call it.
Suggesting that this is outside of the bounds of reasonable thought. That the very idea that people in high places would abuse their power by molesting children...
There we go again. See, the way he has made it so extreme that it has led me to believe that there is no way possible that anybody was actually advancing this position seriously. I have not heard anybody ever say that pedophiles do not exist in positions of power. I've never heard anybody say that people in positions of power do not or cannot abuse that power. It's such sophistry at this point, and it's really disappointing to me, because that's what Sargon was not supposed to do.
Is a reality. And I am going to categorically prove this to you throughout the course of this video, and then I'm going to show you what that reality looks like for the victims.
Oh, this is an excellent addendum. He is going to do an appeal to the emotion. Think of the children argument. Won't somebody in those hateful left-wing camps who are saying there's no evidence to back up Pizzagate, and therefore I'm not placing any credibility in it at all. As a matter of fact, I am saying it is nonsense because there's no proof to back it up. I'm saying it's nonsense in the same way as the people who say stuff about the Twin Towers and gasoline can't melt, steel beams are laughed off. I'm laughing them off in the exact same way because to date it's a conspiracy theory. And here's Sargon saying, well, you can't do that. You have to give credit to it. Say, maybe it could happen because otherwise you're contributing to the culture of silence around pedophilia in the upper echelons of leadership of governments. And then we go on to say that he's going to demonstrate categorically through numerous documented examples that this actually happens. Well, like I said before, a big clap, a standing ovation for you, buddy, because nobody in their fucking right mind was saying otherwise. And I'm not talking about just the skeptic community, I'm talking about your supposed political opposition here.
Last month, Norwegian police uncovered a massive paedophile ring, leading to the arrest of 51 men and the seizure of 150 terabytes of data, including photos, videos, and chat transcripts. You might think, wow, 51 people, that is a huge number.
No, it actually wasn't. What's your point?
No, that's actually a surprisingly small number.
He seems to think that we don't believe that these people exist. That, when I say we, I'm talking about people who aren't quite as right as he is.
Last year, European police agency Europol uncovered a massive online paedophile ring, which led to the arrest of 184 people and the recovery of 230 abused children.
Okay, another headline. Apparently, pedophile rings do exist. Sargon has proved that they're not a myth, and that they exist, especially in Europe. I mean, there is sort of a stereotype around Europe to begin with, so I'm not exactly sure what he thinks he's proving here, but Europe does have this this pedophile stereotype, believe it or not. Listen to Raka Raka Ali's some of his songs.
An internet paedophile ring with up to 70,000 members, thought to be the world's largest, has been uncovered by police, a security official said on Wednesday.
Good. So what are you saying here? That the police, who are controlled by the governments, who you will go on to accuse of being some of the biggest perpetrators of these crimes, apparently the police can uncover them, though, because they're in power, and apparently the people the ruling class are the evil ones who are doing all this. But at the same time, go ahead. Yeah, apparently the cops are the good guys in it. They're standing up.
The European police
great.
agency Europol said in a statement that Operation Rescue had identified 670 suspects, and that 230 abused children in 30 countries had been taken to safety. More children are expected to be found. This was a colossal international child sex trafficking network. Unsurprisingly, these people met through the use of an internet forum, and then would proceed to message each other and continue their activities that way.
Okay, so we've now established that pedophilia is an international problem. Great.
And the forum that this website was on was operated from a server based in the Netherlands.
I think we should personally ban it, have them raid it, and make sure that this sort of content is never allowed hosted on any servers at all. I mean, what is this point here? So what? It's based on a server in the Netherlands. It's irrelevant information. 70,000 members worldwide. It's a worldwide ring. Pedophiles exist. Excellent. We've established this already. What are you waffling on about, Sargon?
In 2004,
Nobody is denying that this
Portugal was
exists.
rocked by a child sex abuse scandal that is known as the Casa Pia scandal. It has already been billed as Portugal's trial of the century, a child abuse case involving a state-run orphanage.
He just waffles
as well as
on
TV
and on.
personalities and diplomats that has horrified the nation.
Okay, so he made an important point here. It was a state-run orphanage, so this is where he begins to imply that this is a problem that is being perpetuated, especially by the top echelon, the leaders, obviously, of these countries and whatnot. That is what he's going for here, and as you can see, he's slowly bringing it together. In this case, it was an orphanage run by TV personalities and diplomats, as well, that horrified the nation. So, great. You brought up an instance where somebody in the government was involved with one of these scandals, with one of these pedophile rings. What's your point? Nobody was saying the government never could be involved. I mean, it is just a ridiculous position that nobody brought up.
The Casa Pia affair, which has shaken the very foundations of the Portuguese state, finally goes to trial on Thursday. Former presidents have been accused of turning a blind eye to complaints about systematic abuse over more than a decade.
They've been turning an eye to complaints, apparently. How does this differ much from, like, similar accusations being levied against universities and whatnot that, you know, you're 100% certain, you're a true skeptic to those, but these we need to lend more credibility, apparently. These complaints, these allegations, why?
As a result of this investigation and trial, 5 men were convicted.
Oh, because think of the children. Yes. You see, Sargon, he has children. So all of a sudden, this has become an emotional issue to him. Similar to the people who it might be an emotional issue to if they have daughters who are going away to these universities and they buy into the hysteria surrounding the narrative that is being perpetuated, especially by the left-wing media and just progressives in general.
Jailed of the abuse of over 100 boys and girls from this orphanage. This was one of the longest-running trials in Portuguese history, and it started when few of the victims came forward and alleged that there was a sex trafficking
Alleged, take a drink.
operating from within these orphanages, and alleging that there were politicians, diplomats,
Alleged, take a drink.
and media personalities who were involved in a paedophile ring and actively covered this up to protect themselves. It should come as no surprise that authorities investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann believe that she may have been snatched by a paedophile ring to...
There's just so much here that is conjecture, that is not concrete, and yet you make yourself out to be this great mind who only believes in the most concrete of evidence. I'm not going to believe what the CIA says because they are evil, but I will believe what the supposed victims here are alleging against the government, because you know what? The government is just so utterly corrupt. If only Sargon was in charge of the government, we wouldn't have corruption, because Sargon lives in this little idealistic bubble where he thinks that it is actually possible to run a government without having corruption in it. So in other words, have a government with no morally bankrupt people in it. Apparently, he believes that this is some sort of utopia that he can aim realistically for. And that is continually over the years, almost the months especially, been one of Sargon's positions that have continually eroded, is that his worldview is no longer based on what is concrete, but more, he's adopted an ideology about this. You know, he thinks that he is a liberal. He was defending free speech, and free speech or death is pretty much his give me liberty or give me death. He's one of those guys. And then he claims that's not an ideological position. It is.
Order. According to an email sent by the Metropolitan Police, a child abduction ring based in Belgium placed an order for a young girl. 3-year-old Madeleine was spotted while on holiday in Portugal by someone connected to the gang, who took a picture of her. The photograph was sent back to Belgium, where the paedophile ring agreed that she should be abducted.
Who cares? What does this story have to contribute to your point? You're just reading news stories now that are centered around the theme of pedophiles.
Officer John Short wrote an email to Leicestershire Police on March the 4th, which was passed to Operation Task, the British end of the investigation. It said, intelligence suggests that a paedophile ring in Belgium made an order for a young girl 3 days before Madeleine McCann was taken. Someone connected to the group saw Maddie, took a photograph of her and sent it to Belgium. The purchaser agreed that the girl was suitable, and Maddie was taken. Belgium has long had problems with child sex trafficking rings being ignored, as this article all the way back in 2000...
Yeah, as a matter of fact, wasn't that recently in the UK where there was a ring that was ignored? Oh, that was interesting. Sargon, he really loved that story as well for some odd reason. He just has this fascination with pretty much any story that involves pedophiles. I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying he is one, okay? I want to make it clear. I'm just saying he could be, and that by completely dismissing it out of hand, you terrible, terrible people are contributing to the culture of silence surrounding it. Don't you understand that? So the next time you see somebody suggest that Sargon of Akkad might be a pedophile, well, just be a little less skeptical. Come on, think of the children here. Obviously, it happens. Therefore, don't contribute to the culture of silence that surrounds it. These people, like Sargon, who are highly respected and in positions of authority, have a lot to lose if their image is ever compromised by this information getting out.
2 will show us.
I'm being sarcastic, by the way.
Broadcast a clandestine interview with the pedophile murder suspect.
It's because that's sort of the argument that Sargon's advancing.
On charges of abducting, raping, and killing 4 girls. He was arrested in 1996 in a case which rocked the nation. 2 of the children he abducted starved to death in makeshift dungeons under his house. He also said
what?
That he had been part of a wider pedophile network, but said the justice system did not want to pursue it.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened in Britain, and you covered that one before. The Rotherham rape gangs, I think they were called. So why is this so revolutionary? You've already covered this before. It's from 2002. How is this relevant? You're just, once again, saying, oh, look, I'm going to bring up 5 or 6 examples of when the pedophilia happened and it was ignored by the authorities. Therefore, it proves to everybody, all the naysayers, that it can happen, it does happen, and that they're wrong for being skeptical. Bravo, bravo. Confirmed your straw man argument there, because nobody was actually saying that it can't happen. Yeah.
There is a well-grounded pedophile ring, he said. I maintained regular contact with...
And if there is, please name names so that we can hold those individuals accountable for just being stupid idiots at this point. Because if you are somebody who actually denies that this can happen, you're pretty idiotic, to be fair.
People in this ring. However, the law does not want to investigate this lead. BBC's correspondent in Brussels said that the interview was bound to fuel conspiracy theories that the delay in bringing Dutroux to trial is because of a cover-up by members of the Belgian establishment allegedly linked to paedophile activities.
He just reads every single article.
Have been accused of on multiple occasions. For example, by Jill Dando, the murdered television presenter who tried to alert her bosses to a paedophile ring at the BBC involving big...
I mean, it makes for good podcasting.
The retired BBC worker said the late Crime Watch host was told DJs, celebrities, and other staff were involved in organised abuse. But the anonymous source says no one wanted to know when Miss Dando raised concerns about the alleged ring and other sexual abuse claims at the BBC.
Okay, once again, same stuff. People in positions of power can be pedophiles. Bravo, well done. You proved it again. It happens. It has happened. It will happen. What is your point? What is your solution? How does this refuting anybody's argument? And if it is, if you're aiming this at some specific individual, please name them.
She said to have passed the file to senior management in the mid-1990s, but they never carried out an investigation. This is, of course, all old news in Britain, as the Jimmy Savile scandal has broke and prompted a flood of calls to abuse victims groups from people who claim to have been abused by him. Widespread
claim to be. Once again, Sargon slipping in terms of his skepticism that he prides himself so much on.
Of sexual abuse against Sir Jimmy Savile, which Scotland Yard confirmed stretch back 6 decades, have seen victims groups swamped with
widespread allegations. So all of a sudden, if it's widespread, you're going to believe it. Okay, so if I get the entire CIA, if I get several bureaus of the government to claim that the Russians rigged the U.S. election, all of a sudden you're going to believe it? No, of course, that doesn't make any sense. So who cares if it's a widespread allegation? That does not prove anything. That's just bandwagoning at this point.
The case has dredged up painful memories for the victims of child abuse, who are also now coming forward in the hundreds to seek counselling. Pete Saunders, Chief Executive of the National Association for People Abused in Childhood, said its hotline received 1,400 calls in the last 10 days, 7 times the normal amount.
Yeah.
Jimmy Savile had a long and distinguished career in broadcasting in Britain, and was a very popular figure in British media, until, of course, this scandal broke.
He was popular, like Sargon.
The floodgates opened. This scandal reached the very top of the BBC, with major entertainment figures like Gary Glitter, Max Clifford, Rolf Harris, and radio DJ Chris Denning being convicted of child sex offences over a period of...
Let's just hope that our favorite YouTube entertainers never have this happen to them.
30 years. And as you can see as we go through the rest of this video, all of this is maintained by a conspiracy of silence, by people who are afraid of...
A conspiracy of silence again. So like I said, do not be afraid to speak out when somebody mentions that Carl Benjamin could potentially be a pedophile, because your skepticism is only fueling that culture of silence. You bigoted idiot.
Power of the people taking part in these activities.
Won't somebody think of the
Only
children?
last month did the football industry receive its own paedophilia scandal, of how football has been shaken to its core by tales of sexual abuse by monsters in tracksuits. Stories of historic sexual abuse in youth football emerged this week. Former crew
More
player Andy Moore was the
sensationalism.
first to give his
This
account.
looks like a
He spoke to
Daily
the
Mail
Daily
article,
Mail.
the way they do
This is
little
not
bulletin
something that
points.
is isolated.
I
And
would
it's
like
not
you
something
to
confined
list the
Europe.
source. I wonder if he does
In
do
total,
sources.
1,400 child abuse suspects have been identified.
Yeah, he does
Of the
have information
1,433 suspects
sources
identified,
right
216
there.
are now dead.
Rationalists.
261 are classified as people of public
Should take a
prominence,
look at that.
with 135 coming from TV, film, or radio. Of the remainder, 76 suspects are politicians, 43 are from the music industry, and 7 come from the world of sport. A total of 666 claims relate to institutions, with 357 separate institutions
He
identified.
just
Of these,
reads the
154
entire
are
page for no good
75
reason.
are children's homes, and 40 are religious institutions. They also include 14 medical establishments.
I mean, he's starting to sound like TLDR in terms of just citing random numbers as if somebody can realistically entertain these abstract numbers in their head in any important way.
11 community institutions, 9 prisons,
In any
9 sports venues,
significant
and 28
way.
other institutions, including military groups and guest houses. This is a
Yeah,
widespread
wow,
problem,
look.
and it
We
reaches from
found
the very bottom to the very
pedophilia.
top of our society. As I said, this
At the very top. Oh, I didn't think it was possible. I thought all governments were incorrigible. You mean they can actually be corrupt? What is this world coming to?
is not an isolated problem. Almost every entertainment industry seems to have some
Good thing, though, that if we have a Sargon dictatorship, corruption will be a thing of the past, baby.
variant on this story, especially when it comes to dealing with child stars. I was molested and passed around, says Corey Feldman, as he describes his
Oh, look, now we're going to talk about Hollywood. Why? Just to prove once again that what he's saying is
deal at the hands of a Hollywood PR
happened.
and
What
says
he's
Corey
saying
Feldman was just
happens
11
that
years old
nobody
when
ever
he was
said
first
didn't
arrested.
happen.
In an interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Feldman discusses how he was repeatedly molested by adult players in the industry, saying these men would pass many young stars back and forth to each other. He also reveals that his closest friend, Corey Haim, was raped when he was just 11 by a producer.
I mean,
The start of a long
it's
cycle of
getting
sexual
to the
abuse.
point
Feldman
where
believes that
he's
his
kind of
drugs and alcohol in his
obsessed
life.
with it.
Haim would struggle with drugs up until
Who
his
in
death
their
in
right mind
1998,
just
a death that Feldman blamed
peruses
on
the
mental
web
abuse of the actor.
to find all these commercials? Not these commercials. These information. These. Oh, I'm just drawing a blank here. These news articles.
And is and always will be pedophilia. That's the biggest problem for children in this industry.
The casting couch even applies to children.
Oh yeah, not in the same way. It's all done under the radar.
Nobody talks about pedophilia.
It's the big secret.
And it's white.
Nobody talks about it. Well, bravo for Carl Benjamin. He's talking about it. He's speaking up. He is bold and brave. And I'll have you know he's also a father. And therefore, this directly impacts him. I imagine he thinks he's worrying about it himself, or he has ulterior motives. I don't know. I don't really know what he's up to. I'm just saying, don't contribute to the culture of silence that Sargon here is demonstrating. Obviously, he found somebody who said something on ABC News that said that this happens in Hollywood. So, wow, it must really be a big problem. Look at this guy.
I was surrounded by them. It's
a big problem.
13 years old. Surrounded. Literally. Didn't even know it.
Surrounded.
I was old enough to realize what they were and what they wanted and what they were about and the types of people that were surrounding me until I went, oh my God, they were everywhere like vultures.
They were everywhere. Does anybody think that sounds a little sensationalist? Now, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just pointing out that when in other areas that Sargon is extremely skeptical of, if somebody made that same claim, do you think that he would let that claim slide? That he would say that that's just like entirely credible? Just let them get away with it. There's no exaggeration there at all. There's no hyperbole there. No, he'd call that out. Come on.
I'm saying that there are people that were the people that did this to both me and Corey that are still working. They're still out there, and they're some of the richest, most powerful people in this business.
And
they do not want me saying what I'm saying right now.
Are you saying that they're pedophiles?
Yes.
And that they're still in this business?
Yes.
That's what you're saying in your book.
They're in the business, and then the most powerful people in the business don't want them talking, and here they are on The View, probably one of the most mainstream shows that's really rigged by the puppet masters upstairs. I mean, the View is not indie in any way. I mean, this guy, we're supposed to applaud him because he spoke out on The View, a mainstream show that apparently this wasn't supposed to happen because there's a big conspiracy of silence by the people on the top who apparently control shows like this. So it's just the same old, same old. We hear this in every sector when allegations like this come out, but apparently Sargon, he has a soft spot for these supposed victims, for these allegations. This is his Achilles heel.
When you talk to parents,
Here right now. Trust
Corey,
me, they're dead.
And this isn't just one person saying this either. Elijah Wood has said,
It's just not one person. Well, I'm glad your bandwagon fallacy doesn't apply here, Sargon. Who cares how many people say it, okay? it ultimately does not make any allegations more true or more false, okay? It's just completely irrelevant at this point, especially since we already know that your basic premise is correct and that nobody is actually seriously disputing that. It's like aliens, okay? Should we talk about aliens? It's sort of the proof of the negative thing. Well, we should talk about aliens, because if you're not, obviously the powers that be are conspiring against us, not releasing information that surround aliens. What about Area 51? Why can't we go there, etc., etc.? It's the same dumb bullshit.
Something very similar. In an interview for the Sunday Times, he said that child actors are regularly preyed upon by vipers in Hollywood. He said he never went to parties where that kind of thing was going on because his mother protected him from interacting with people who could take advantage of him. But he says, I have been led down dark paths to realize that these things are probably still happening. We are also aware that there are pedophile rings operating within Western governments. In Britain, ever since the 1980s,
Holy
there have
smokes,
been a
you
long
don't
trail
say
of
that
allegations
couldn't
there was a
happen.
pedophile ring at the
Oh,
heart of the
never
British
did.
establishment. The claims are of a VIP Westminster pedophile ring, operating from the heart of the establishment from the 1960s onwards, and has led to allegations of a massive cover-up across Whitehall, spanning decades, pressure on the police and prosecutors not to pursue cases, and the apparent disappearance of key dossiers and files detailing claims of child abuse and alleged attackers. Now that these people are getting old and dying, the truth is emerging about the systematic sexual abuse by members of the British government, and how that was covered up.
Since the beginning of history, corruption in government has existed. I should say, since the beginning of governments being established, corruption in government has been a thing. The point, he's just beating a dead horse at this point, okay?
In 1983, a controversial MP, Geoffrey Dickens, made a series of incendiary claims about active paedophiles in the corridors of power. He handed a file containing the names of alleged perpetrators to Leon Britton. Publicly, the authorities shrugged off the claims and no trial or prosecution was
Alleged
filed. The dossier
again.
mysteriously disappeared. A journalist
Mysteriously disappeared. You know, that does ring of conspiracy level information news. If somebody said the same thing about the CIA and their claims against Russia, you would brush that off immediately. I mean, you are 100% skeptical about those claims, but all of a sudden, these claims apparently hold true. We have to believe these, or we should give these more credit than those. Why? Well, because it's a victim punching up, isn't it? It's not the ruling class. You know, CIA, they're ruling. They're probably evil. You know, Sargon has a big thing against the establishment because he thinks that apparently it's possible to have an establishment that isn't corrupt. To some extent, it's true. You could have less corrupt establishments, and generally, democracies have less corrupt establishments as opposed to dictatorships. But he apparently thinks that it could even be lower. And I'm not saying that we should fall for the bigotry of low expectations here, but there is just really no point at this time that you can actually prove anything that is being said here. It's complete conjecture. It's complete conjecture on your part, and it just doesn't fit your MO for a lot of what you
who was
do.
investigating this dossier was confronted in his office by a furious member of parliament who threatened him and demanded the documents. He says he was frothing at the mouth, really shouting and spitting in my face. He was straight at me like a raging lion, ready to knock me through the wall.
He told that to the Daily Beast, so I imagine it's the Daily Beast that reported on it. That's not a problem, really, because the Daily Beast is sort of a left-leaning paper. But what's the point here? He says that somebody threatened him. He was frothing and foaming at the mouth. Well, in this given article, perhaps it was because he was being accused of being a pedophile when he wasn't. Wouldn't that make you angry? Wouldn't that make you upset if somebody brought false allegations against you? You make it sound as if this is an indictment of his character, that if he wasn't one, he wouldn't be so upset. But maybe I'm just misreading this.
The editor's resistance was futile. The following morning, police officers from the counter-terror and intelligence unit known as the Special Branch burst into the newspaper office, seized the material, and threatened to have Hale arrested if he ever reported what had been found. Ex-Thatcher Minister Lord Tebbit said that this was probably a political cover-up of this child abuse to protect the system, as it emerged that 114 more documents were lost. Former Conservative Cabinet Minister Lord Tebbit says he believes there may well have been a political cover-up over child abuse in the 1980s. Norman Tebbit, who served in a series of ministerial posts under Thatcher, said that the
it's in
incident was
quotes
to protect
even.
the system and not delve too deeply into uncomfortable allegations.
Yeah. So what's the point here? You just proved the exact same thing you proved for the last 10 minutes. Congratulations.
Naturally, the people involved with the system, even if they weren't involved with this kind of thing, wanted to maintain the status quo and prevent this kind of scandal from breaking out. The missing dossier was compiled by Dickens, is thought to have detailed allegations of 1980s Westminster paedophile ring, and is now known to be one of the 114 potentially relevant Home Office files that were destroyed, lost, or missing.
Keep reading,
It has emerged.
Sargon.
This issue is still going on, with the Home Office under fire of
Keep
this lost
reading
dossier
news
in
articles.
2014. The Home Office said that the
He's just
investigating
gonna
review
go
found the
on and
credible
on
elements of
with
the
this
dossier which
stuff.
had realistic potential for further investigation, was sent to police and prosecutors while other elements were either not retained or were destroyed. This had all the hallmarks of a cover-up.
I wonder what kind of searches you have to do to find these articles. Just out of curiosity.
Another involves a document found at an address of a paedophile, which originated from the Houses of Parliament and listed a number of highly prominent individuals, MPs and senior police officers, as being involved in a paedophile ring where no action was taken. And it will come as no
It just doesn't matter at this point what he says. I mean, the point of the entire video is that it exists, and nobody ever said it didn't, so it's like Young Turks level of refuting a point that was never made.
Cover-up, he said. There was no doubt in their minds that the way that they could deal with this was to simply expunge it from the record. As far as they were concerned, they could make it go away forever. Britain is, of course, not the only country in which this has happened. Survivors of the alleged elite paedophile ring, including former Prime Minister Speaks Out.
What a surprise!
Which involved 3 former Prime Ministers, has alleged she was prostituted to paedophile parties at Parliament House in Canberra. Speaking to media in Sydney, Fiona Barnett detailed her alleged abuse by the alleged elite paedophile ring 40 years ago. The 45-year-old said that she was abused by the ring, which included high-ranking politicians, police, and members of the judiciary at the age of 5, and claimed that there were thousands of other victims. My experiences were horrific beyond words, she said, but the way I've been treated for reporting the crimes I witnessed and experienced has been far worse than my original abuse experiences. And yes, there
Why? What's the point here?
Australians who have been jailed for their parts in paedophile rings. David Glenn Ketchen, a member of paedophile Shannon McCall's child exploitation website, was jailed for 7 years and 5 months. McCall, a former government carer in South Australia, is serving a 35-year sentence for the sexual abuse of multiple children. One of the Adelaide members of this global website, Ketchen, 30, had previously pleaded guilty to possessing, accessing, and disseminating child exploitation material. The district court previously
he will just waffle on and on, reading fucking articles.
According to the requirements of his VIP membership status. And yes, there are paedophiles who operate at the very upper echelons of political power in
Color me surprised, Sargon. I had no idea that was possible. The government is incorrigible.
In the United States. Billionaire hedge fund mogul Jeffrey Epstein became a free man 5 years after he was
Jeffrey Epstein. Everybody loves Epstein, don't they?
Underage girls. After months of reporting, the Daily Beast reveals the exclusive details of the investigation and the legal wrangling that saved him from a long-term prison sentence. During Epstein's term of house arrest, he made several trips each month to his New York home and his private Caribbean island. In the earlier stage of his sentence for soliciting prostitution for a minor, 13 months with the Palm Beach Stockade, he was allowed out to his office each day. Meanwhile, Epstein had settled more than a dozen lawsuits brought by the underage girls who were recruited to perform massages at his Palm Beach mansion. 7 victims reached a last-minute deal this week, days before the scheduled trial. Each received well over $1 million, an amount that will hardly dent Epstein's $2 billion net.
Oh, so right here we learned that apparently these people who are accusing him, they settled out of court for well over $1 million apiece. Does anybody remember Donald Trump settling his deal with the Trump University thing? He settled that out of court. I think Sargon defended that, though. He said, it's not proof that any fraud was committed. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'm putting words in Sargon's mouth. But I mean, it's the same thing here. They settled out of court. What's the point? There was no real evidence that it happened. It's just that they got paid off.
Worth. The Palm Beach Police Department identified
and I mean, I'm not even trying to defend any of this stuff. It's just, if it happened or it didn't happen is irrelevant. It does happen. We know it happens, and that's what's important.
Not counting Nadia Marcinkova, whom Epstein referred to as his Yugoslavian sex slave because he had imported her from the Balkans at age 14. Now 24, she had become a member of the household and is alleged to have participated in sexual contact with underage girls. There are some heavy allegations surrounding politicians and royalty.
Oh, so now if the allegations are heavy, we should give them more credibility. We should assign more weight to them if they're heavier. How did you define heavy, Sargon? Out of curiosity, what makes an allegation heavier? Huh? Is it if it involves children? Is not it now all of a sudden heavier than if it involves an adult? I mean, I'm just wondering what your criteria is here.
Their time with a convicted pedophile. For the first time, Jeffrey Epstein's Island of Sin is seen, showing where teenage sex slaves were allegedly abused by the banker and some of the world's most powerful men.
Alleged.
Billionaires' private jets, nicknamed by locals as the Lolita Express, numerous girls were allegedly taken to his 78-acre Little St. James hideout in the US Virgin Islands. It is claimed that they were made to take part in depraved orgies. The island is where Epstein's alleged sex slave Virginia Williams claimed he made her take part in orgies, including one where she alleged the Duke of York was there for. Virginia claims she and the girls were ordered by the banker to assemble at the cabana.
Alleged.
According to flight logs, Prince Andrew paid at least one visit aboard Epstein's private jets to the island.
Oh no! Somebody actually flew with Epstein on his jet. It's not like he was an important figure or anything that anybody would have anything to do with him. No. So obviously, guilt by association in the nth degree by Sargon of Akkad here. Obviously, simply associating with Epstein makes you a criminal as well. So, I mean, it's not possible that Epstein, up until recently, did a fairly good job of concealing a lot of this information, and that, you know, obviously everybody in the government knew what Epstein was up to, right? For shame, government. How could you be so corrupt?
This included prominent American politicians, powerful business executives, foreign presidents, a well-known prime minister, and other world leaders. The flight logs also show that Bill Clinton
Epstein was pretty popular.
Island fucking frequently.
Yes, now this is an interesting article, and I would agree that it definitely does look suspicious because Bill Clinton especially, 26 times in 3 years, that does look suspicious. I would find it difficult to believe that he did not have any idea what was going on there.
The flight logs show that he went there 26 times in 3 years.
But again, that's besides the
The most
point.
powerful people in the world are doing this with impunity because nobody has the power to stop them. And when they are, like Epstein, finally brought to trial, he simply pays off the victims and escapes the sentencing.
How does this not apply to pretty much anybody who is popular, who has power, who has money? Take a look at your good friend Bering, somebody who I disagree with his method of doing things seriously. He lost his channel, did he not, for breaking laws. Now, some people would say that he got off fairly easily. I'm not exactly sure what sort of settlement he made with the company that claimed the copyrighted images that he was selling, but he got off fairly easily. He's got his channel back. He can upload to it again. And do you think that would also apply to somebody who only had 2,000 subscribers, for example? Do you? No, of course not. The more influence you have, the better deals you can cut. And I'm surprised you're so dense you do not understand this. Also, I think it was pretty tactless of you to sort of flip your shit and upload a video promoting Bering shortly after he was banned from YouTube and before you actually knew all the facts of the case. All of a sudden, the facts of the case didn't matter a whole lot. You make a big deal out of that in regards to Pizzagate. All of a sudden, you were talking about, well, I can't say anything about it because there's really no evidence has come out to support it. You will say the same thing. I'm skeptical about CIA claims about that involve Russian hacking, Russian tampering in the United States elections. But when your best buddy Bering, the fucking moronic bear who apparently has nothing of original value to contribute to any conversation anyway besides being a knockoff cheapskate, wannabe Leafy or Keemstar, all of a sudden that you were hot on that case because you thought your precious freedom of speech was being violated here, and that was another one of your Achilles heels. Your knee-jerk reaction to that was immediate and swift, just like TJ Kirk's reaction, just like Undoom's reaction. Oh, that moron, jumping the gun when the agenda suits them. Maintaining the appearance, but maintaining that skeptical edge that keeps you in your community. But whenever your triggers are triggered, man, you are just as fallible as the rest of them.
But as I said, this stretches from the very top right down to the very bottom of society, as this 2005 article on the BBC will show us about China.
From the top to the bottom of society. Who would have thought? People are depraved in every position in the land. It's possible, I should say. They're not all, obviously, but it's certainly possible. In any position in the land, there can be depraved people. Up to no good. Abusing their positions of power. Mistreating others. Yeah. Who would have thought? This is Sargon simply shining a light on this instance. This conspiracy of silence that has been pervading just politics and media in general. Sargon's a hero. He's a white knight. He's coming through to save them children.
Child abuse sex gangs in France. France has been shocked by the scale of abuse revealed at the Angers paedophile trial, where 65 adults were accused of sexually abusing 45 children. The abused were aged from 6 months to 14 years, and some of them were prostituted and raped by their own parents and grandparents in a poor district of the town in western France. The accused were mostly from deprived backgrounds, and many of them were unemployed and had learning difficulties. Some were illiterate and appeared not to fully understand the charges they faced. A number said that they themselves had been sexually abused when they were children. Everything we've seen so far has been words and numbers regarding
generational
rings. We haven't taken a look at the damage they do to the victims of their activity.
Oh, now we're going to take a look at the damage they do. This is where Sargon is in his element here, appealing to emotion. He will waffle a bit. He'll say, "Oh, I can't believe it is just so terrible. Did you ever imagine it was so terrible? I think these people don't understand how terrible it really is."
And that's what we look at now. And I have to warn you.
It doesn't really matter how terrible it is. It's still against the law.
In their ceaseless
He's not
search
going to pull any punches.
World,
Ooh, tough talk from Sargon. Carl Benjamin.
Kim 50.
The woman with 100 personalities, You will see Sargon loves this person. He really thinks that she drives a nail into his little coffin here. The point that he's trying to make, she exemplifies it perfectly because she painted multiple pictures. And apparently the pictures of bad stuff that she painted were directly influenced by her childhood and not, for example, a book that she read or a television show she watched, a movie she watched, stories that she heard over the radio from friends. None of that. This happened to her personally, and Sargon just knows it.
Has dissociative identity disorder, DID. She is, in effect, scores of different people. The exact number is uncertain, wrapped up in one body. These personalities are all quite distinct, with their own names, ages, and quirks of temperament. Some are children and some are male. Kim was born in 1960. Her parents, stuck in an unhappy marriage, were factory workers, and the care of their daughter was farmed out to friends and local acquaintances. The details of what happened are hazy, but it seems from an early age, somewhere between 1 and 3, Kim suffered extreme and repeated abuse. At this point, her mind, traumatized beyond endurance, shattered into fragments, forming myriad separate identities. The breaks were clean. Most of the principal personalities had no memories of abuse and no flashbacks. Thus, she was protected.
So right there is an important part. Most of the principal personalities had no memories of the abuse and no flashbacks. What makes you think any of them had memories of it? There's really nothing to prove it. It's the mind of a schizophrenic. We don't fully understand the human mind. How can you really draw any concrete conclusions? And this, I'm saying this as somebody who wants to hold Sargon to his own standard of only going along with the concrete evidence that is being presented to us. Listening to a schizophrenic, watching a schizophrenic paint pictures does not prove jack shit, Sargon.
Happened. In her late 20s came a period of relative stability. With the immensely capable Haley personality predominant during the work hours, Kim was able to hold down a job as a van driver for 5 years. But one day something must have caused a switch, and a disturbed personality called Julie suddenly found herself driving the van. She ploughed straight into a line of parked cars. This led to another mental health section and a diagnosis of schizophrenia. Eventually, Kim re-emerged from the hospital, and her story took another dramatic twist. She somehow found herself exposed to the activities of a paedophile ring. In the book, we are told that when she reported it to the police, she received anonymous warnings to be quiet. Threats of retaliation escalated until one day, a man threw acid in her face, and someone tried to set light to her bed with her in it. Kim got out, but the house was duffed.
Wow, that's some pretty damning evidence right there. Threats of retaliation. There's no way that in the mind of a schizophrenic that these things could just be imagined. Because when you are schizophrenic, I mean, for all we know, she could have set her own house on fire. The two conflicting personalities inside her mind could have been at war with each other. That's where the threats could have come from. She might have thrown acid in her own face when she was in this bout of schizophrenia. She might have set her own bed to fire. It doesn't prove anything because these people are so mentally unstable that they're not really credible in what they're talking about. You can't take them at their word the same way you would an average person who's of sound mental intellect.
Under one of her personalities as Patricia, she began art therapy in 2004, and more than a dozen personalities have started to paint regularly and prolifically. The styles, palettes, and skill levels vary enormously. Some paintings are abstract, others are more representational. The paintings of Rhea Pratt, a very disturbed personality, are naive little cameos with whips and cages and wispy stick figures, with the children being raped or abused, painted in lighter colors. And it's...
You'll see Sargon loves this story because apparently it triggers the right knee-jerk reaction for him to make people really empathetic. Sargon's all about that empathy, man. You know, he's been championing it for, oh wait, he never really has. He said, I don't care about your feelings, fuck your feelings. He said that time and time again to people who have pretty much advanced the same argument that Sargon goes on here with.
Alter ego Rhea Pratt that we're going to take a look at now, because I suspect that these paintings directly represent things she personally witnessed.
He suspects it, you know, so that's good enough. Apparently, conjecture on Sargon's part is only permitted when it actually suits the narrative that he likes.
Or had done to her. And this is the human cost of these paedophile rings.
Human
this
cost.
This is a child who has been chained to the wall. And
we can't afford, okay, to continue this conspiracy of silence. Just one is one too many. Here you can see a painting. This proves a lot because somebody painted it, and obviously it represents reality. There's no way that just disturbed people might paint something like that. It actually happened.
The is her disassociated self. You can see that the physical...
How do you know that's her disassociated self? It's just a picture with one person on top and then one chained to the wall.
The child being chained to the wall is
not on top of it.
Whereas in the top right, I think what's being displayed is the dissociated personality.
I think. It's just more conjecture from good old Sargon.
Which is translucent and floating away from the body. This is a motif that features throughout the artwork of Rhea Pratt, and you'll also see there is backwards writing on the walls that is always some version of help us or kill us. There are many pictures like this of presumably her and many other children who are either just standing in place or hanging...
Presumably. Yeah, we're just presuming now. No evidence required. We're just presuming.
And they appear to be looking directly at the ground, and often you'll see a child's toy like a teddy bear just sat in the middle of the room. As you can see in this picture, this child is being tortured in some way by smiling adults who are holding the child suspended in what appears to be some method of torture by stringing them up by their wrists.
Yeah, it is pretty
You'll notice that
sick,
this is
isn't it,
just the
Sargon?
people in this photo
What's
visible.
the point?
You can see the disassociated form of the child towards the top of the picture, floating away from the pain. This appears to have been a process of systematic abuse by an
How do you think Sargon came across this article, by the way? He must really be into this kind of stuff.
organized group of adults who are almost consistently pictured with little smiles on their faces. From the pictures, it seems to me that this is a continuous campaign of psychological as well as physical abuse to utterly demean the child, to make them feel as if they are nothing. As
Or it's the ramblings of a schizophrenic.
you can see in this picture,
Who knows,
adults
could be
men with
either
erections
one.
stand around this child, pointing and what appears to be
I mean,
smiling
you really
at
are
the
building a
child's suffering.
conspiracy out of this.
As I said, women appear in this artwork frequently as well as very tiny children. The abuse apparently wasn't limited to just one child at a time, and they seem to have been treated like animals as they busily disassociate themselves from the hell they are going through.
Hey,
I have to say,
let's
I
talk
really
about
find myself
fiction
disturbed
and what
by the
happened in
smiles
the
on faces of
fictional
adults in these
story.
videos and the way they're treating such young children. It's just, this video has been very difficult to make. I'm not gonna lie. This was.
This has been very difficult for him to make. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Sargon's so personally invested in this? Because he shouldn't be. He is supposed to be Mr. Objectivity, isn't he? He's not supposed to have biases, but, you know, that's his position more or less, not mine. I think, obviously, there's no way you can fully recuse your coverage of anything from bias. You just have to point out where you might be biased in it. But Sargon thinks otherwise. If you watch his most popular introduction video, the one where he lists his detractors and then points out how poor their arguments are against them.
Video. I'm presenting these pictures from least horrific to most horrific, as I'm sure you can tell by this particular picture.
Oh yeah, that one was just traumatizing right there. I am so triggered, Sargon. How dare you not put a trigger warning on this?
And I really just want to stress that this is reality for the victims of these child sex trafficking.
This is reality. No, it is a painting. It is somebody who is schizophrenic. They painted a picture. But see, it drives home the emotional impact that you want your audience to feel over it. Like I said, you're doing a direct appeal to emotion here, which is really pretty disgraceful. This attempt at sophistry is something that I would not expect from you, but yet you're doing it. And that's the reason you chose this story, is because it actually had something tangible, something that you could show people on YouTube especially, that would actually work up, you know, get them wound up over it. And that's sort of your end goal here, I imagine.
This is what they used to do to them. This is what they still do to
Get them wound up.
What I found really interesting about
Make
these pictures
them
is that often
think
show the victims
irrationally.
adults as disassociating as well as the children, or instead of them. I obviously can't be sure what the significance of that is, but it would seem that she's trying to say
You can't be sure what the significance of this one is, but the other ones were crystal clear. There was no mistaking what was going on in the other ones. This one, though, difficult to say. I mean, I understood it completely when the child was associated with a disassociated personality or whatever, but the adult? What the hell is that? How can that happen? That doesn't fit my narrative.
adults weren't necessarily themselves when they were doing this. It seems that the pictures don't include sexual violence, but also forms of other physical tortures. And many of the pictures are basically this happening in dark grey rooms with.
I'm just wondering why the children in this picture are not disassociated while the adult is. I mean, apparently this is like some hard evidence, so why exactly is it so inconsistent? And if it's not inconsistent, then what does this signify? Carl, go ahead and tell me. Apparently you know all about this. This is one of your areas of expertise. You're a trained psychologist, obviously. You've been studying this for quite some time now, I imagine. Somebody might question your motives in doing so, obviously, but what do they know about you, Sargon? What do they know about you? You're a pillar of morality.
Bloody handprints on the walls. It's just the most horrific thing I've ever seen in my life. It's
just the most horrific thing he's ever seen in his life. These poorly drawn paintings. I mean, really, they're very abstract. They're like stick figure level paintings. But apparently, this has struck Sargon to his core. He is emotionally traumatized by this. He needs a trigger warning. Will somebody get this man his own personal safe space to retreat into? Somebody needs to make him some hot cocoa, get him a pony to pet, and make sure that he's not subjected to any more of this sort of artwork. It is simply too much for a father of his caliber. He obviously has children that he cares so much about.
I'm honestly horrified to have to do this, but I'm sick of
He's
those people that say,
horrified.
oh no, this couldn't possibly be happening. No, what you're saying.
Well, no, nobody's saying it couldn't possibly be happening, okay? And if they are, please point out who is, because I don't think there was any credible media saying what you're claiming they're saying, which means that you're strawmanning their position, which is simply disgraceful.
When you say, I don't believe this is happening, is I personally could never conceive of doing such a thing. And I'm sure that you watching this now can't conceive of such a thing. I'm sure it's just beyond your own range of imagination.
No, I could actually see this happening. There are some really messed up people out there. I've read stories about them. So yeah, it's perfectly possible for this to happen. I'm not incredulous over it. I am just wondering what your point here is that you couldn't have made in 30 minutes, let's say.
But there are people who
I misspoke there. That you couldn't have made in 3 minutes.
can and will and do. And they do it on purpose. They do it with malice.
Oh yeah, I thought they were accidentally doing it. They're just, I mean, that is one of Sargon's biggest failure. I shouldn't even say it's a biggest failure. It's a failure of his. He tends to think that people are inherently good and that apparently there aren't any bad people. No, there are actually bad people who behave that way because they are probably psychopaths and they really don't have a sense of right and wrong in that regard, like most of us do. So no, I completely agree. There are psychopaths. I never doubted their existence. I never doubted that they could do depraved things. So what's your point? Oh yeah, you weren't addressing me. You were addressing some fictitious character that you made, some straw man of the mind, right, Sargon? You think somebody's advancing the story that this stuff doesn't happen, that it couldn't happen, they're incredulous. Yeah, sure. It's nice to think that way, to devolve into your own little world where you get to sort of indulge yourself here. That's clearly what you're doing. I don't know how much you enjoy this. You say you're appalled, but yet you went through with it. It was unnecessarily long. You didn't need to make it this long. You didn't have to make it this exemplary, but you felt the need to do it anyway, and somebody could question your motives there. And I'm not saying you did anything. I'm just saying be skeptical, right? You could have done it. And if we dismiss that, offhand, we are contributing to your culture of silence around big media figures who apparently have big backings behind them, and such revelations would ruin their careers.
With forethought, with planning, knowing that if this is exposed, that is then done. Because this is about the worst thing one human being can do to another. Death is preferable to this, to Kim Noble,
perhaps.
Which is why she so often writes, "Kill us," on the walls.
Well, I'm glad Sargon knows why a schizophrenic is writing what they write on a wall. I think it says a little bit about his mental condition.
In conclusion, Pizzagate is unfounded. We do not know that Pizzagate is a legitimate child sex trafficking ring.
We do not know it, but I just went through a whole bunch of evidence strongly suggesting that it is quite possible and quite likely to be happening. I mean, this is what Sargon does. He does this implicit support. He makes implicit support of things, so that way when people call him out on it later on, he can say, "Oh, I didn't directly say that. Stop putting words in my..." No, there was such a thing as implying intent, and that is exactly what you did here. You said, "Oh, we can't trust we can't," and that's not a good way of putting it. We haven't seen anything credible come out from this yet, from this Pizzagate scandal. And then you went on to demonstrate all the reasons it could possibly be true. I didn't see you demonstrate once why it could be false. It's the typical apologist. I mean, I'm surprised you fell down that trap. It's the apologist who says, there's evidence of aliens, right? We have evidence of aliens. So why are you just contributing to a culture of silence around them? It's quite possible that aliens do exist, and you're just being too skeptical about aliens, man. As somebody who you are supposed to be, your persona, this is completely out of character for you to do.
So I suggest if you are a Pizzagate supporter, you stop saying that it's really happening, because you don't know. But to the people who say Pizzagate is ridiculous and couldn't happen, kindly do everyone a favor and shut your fucking mouths, you ignorant pieces of shit.
Where did that come from? All of a sudden, they should shut their mouths. Why?
You are an innovating factor in exposing these activities and bringing these people to justice and saving the poor
culture of silence
of these child sex trafficking rings that exist anywhere.
So there you have it, some insight from good old Sargon of Akkad. Clearly, he's not the sound person that you might think he is. I want to go back here. Let's take a look at... God damn it. I wanted to take a look at some of his other videos because, yeah, right there's his bearing video. Very proud of that one, I'm sure. Supporting a friend who was selling copyrighted material. Yep. What else do we have? We have a good old-fashioned clickbait right here. Tommy Lauren destroys Trevor Noah over hashtag Black Lives Matter. You can see the rating is a little bit questionable on that one for some reason. Yeah, so that is Sargon of Akkad. He has slipped in recent times, I think. He used to be a lot more unpartisan, or what would it be called, bipartisan. He was less partial to any one party. Nowadays, he really will only look at the bad side of the party he disagrees with, and he will ignore the bad side of the party that at the moment he is in favor for, or he favors. So, in general, just a disappointment from Sargon. He continues to disappoint me with this kind of bullshit that he continues to pump out on a pretty frequent basis at this point. Like, you won't see anyone but Hillary right there. You won't see him call out anything that most people would find questionable about the current or the upcoming administration. There have been some interesting appointments, and you would think Sargon would call that out, but no. Apparently, everything these people are doing, who are no longer going to be controlling the power in America, is still more important than that. And he's going to continue beating that horse until all of his alt-right subscribers apparently leave him. I hate to judge intent, but he is supported on Patreon. And oh look, some tags. This is Social Blade giving him tags. Funny apparently is one of them. I guess his rantings are considered funny. Feminism and MRA though. Those are his top three tags, so excellent. Anyway, yeah, Sargon of Akkad, you have fallen far, my friend. You're not my friend, but you get the turn of phrase there. Yeah, you used to be so much better than you are now, given your fall from grace here in terms of your just reasoning. You've lost it. You've lost your edge. And it might be because people hammer on you for hours after hours, days on days, weeks on weeks, months on months, going on years on years. It could be. Maybe you just need to step away from it all and come back with a fresh perspective that isn't quite... I mean, you really are invested in a lot of what's going on personally, and I think that has warped your perspective on a lot of these issues. But feel free to dismiss my observations like you do everything else, because you are always right. As pretty much you've demonstrated, you and your friends, you completely owned the opposition. Think about the debate with Thunderfoot over Brexit. You might have had the more or the less practical position, but you defended it to the death anyway. And then you get out there on your soapbox and you pretend not to be an ideologue. Yeah. No, you are.